All right, so here is a little bit of Pat Leahy, the senator from Vermont, and Grover Norquist. Yes, talking about a bipartisan agreement on rolling back these mandatory minimum sentences, which have hundreds of thousands of our people sitting in federal prisons becoming criminals or losing their minds because of the way that we do incarcerate people. It's like, I mean, you become an animal in there. It's all about survival. It has nothing to do with rehabilitation, nothing. And we know that rehabilitation is something that especially people who use addictive substances, alcohol would be one that comes to mind. We know that rehabilitation works. We know that Alcoholics Anonymous has an amazing recovery record. We know people swear by Alcoholics Anonymous. We know that they go to meetings. They know that it works if you work it. They know all kinds of things, tools and things that help them conquer their addictions. We know that, well, here in Florida, this is the rehab. It's also the pain management clinic capital of the world. So we get you addicted here, and then we charge you $50,000 to get off, is what we do. It's a revolving door. And we know that rehab works. We know that, people that are in rehab typically aren't there for marijuana either. They're there for things like cocaine. They're there for things like methamphetamine. They're there for things like bath salts, which rots your brain. I mean, you talk about meth will make you take the TV apart. Bath salts will make you take the TV apart looking for listening devices, which you might find now. It's America. That's what the president's talking about. He's talking about the NSA surveillance program, and he says he's going to make reforms. And one of the questions was, why should we trust you? And he's like, well, I didn't really evolve on this. I always thought we needed transparency. I always thought we need... this NSA thing is a little creepy. And so, some of our drug users might not be completely misguided if they take the TV apart looking for the listening device. Just saying. But here's Pat Leahy and Grover Norquist with the reporter, Kerry Johnson, on NPR, talking about why there is agreement on this.
Late last week, two senators, Illinois Democrat Dick Durbin and Utah Republican Mike Lee, moved in that direction. Their bill would give judges more discretion to sentence nonviolent criminals below the so-called mandatory minimums. It would also lower mandatory minimums for several drug crimes. The chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Vermont Democrat Patrick Leahy, says he'll hold a hearing on mandatory minimums next month.
They all sound like a great stop crime idea when they're passed. Most of them sound better on paper than in practice.
That's Leahy talking on C-SPAN last weekend. His partner in the effort is Republican Rand Paul, a Tea Party favorite from Kentucky. They've introduced their own legislation to give judges more power to impose lower sentences, and not just in drug crimes.
Doing away with mandatory minimums, giving more discretion to judges, that shouldn't be Republican or Democrat. It just makes good sense.
The idea has already taken off in nearly 24 states, including Texas, where it won support from prominent conservatives, including Grover Norquist, speaking here for the group Right on Crime.
It's easier to say, let's spend a few dollars a day managing you at your home where you can spend time with your family, where you can work, instead of hundreds of dollars a day keeping you in a cell.
Ohio State University law professor Douglas Berman's been following the criminal justice system for years. With violent crime near record lows and federal prisons eating up a quarter of the Justice Department budget, Berman says now may be time for change.
There's the opportunity for action not only on the Hill, but maybe in the Obama administration, particularly right now when we're still a little bit away from midterm elections and a long time away from the next presidential election cycle.
It would be the first major reform since the crack epidemic of the 1980s.
I don't know why people on NPR talk like this, but they do. But you can now see that there is bipartisan agreement between the ACLU and the American Bar Association and conservative icon Grover Norquist and Rand Paul and Mike Lee of Utah. I mean, this is widespread. This is a known fact that this war on drugs that we have been waging for 40 freaking years now has been a resounding failure. Big fail, very expensive. And it has disrupted mostly minority neighborhoods where there is aggressive policing, and in white suburban neighborhoods where there is probably, well, we know there's more drug usage just through the numbers. There is less policing, so that you end up getting less possession in white neighborhoods and more possession sentencing and more charges in black neighborhoods, and it's just it's screwing us up really bad. So this is one of those things where people don't want to talk about race. I understand they don't. I do, because for me it's a question of decency and justice, and those two go together. And we don't have that in these mandatory minimum sentences. We don't have decency because the judge isn't allowed to decide whether or not this person standing before him is a moral person, a decent person, a tax-paying contributor to his community, or if this person is a meth freak who's likely to go out there and disrupt the neighborhood, disrupt the steal copper tubing or blow up a house, making the there's no discretion here. And so it causes these mandatory minimum sentence causes an overcrowding of prisons, which is also expensive, and because of the aggressive policing, it causes racial disparity in sentencing to begin with. So I think that there is a lot of interest in scrapping these laws forever. Like I said, they want to move incrementally, one group, and the other group wants to move and just dispose of these mandatory minimums. And why we can't make an effort at just decriminalizing altogether the marijuana, which, by the way, in this country, between 1840, just want to say, for those of you who like the founding, between 1840 and 1930 in this country, there are so many medical papers that tout and actually tell doctors to prescribe marijuana to treat convulsive disorders, emaciation, apparently eating disorders are not something new, and neuralgia, and all kinds of neuropathic, all kinds of brain seizures, things like that. People who can't eat because of cancer treatments. I mean, this actually is a boon for medicine. This is a great thing, and it takes people out of the realm of the poppy-based, the synthetic heroines that are being prescribed like candy, which is also screwing up our society, I got to say. I mean, down here, you got to really look to find somebody that's not on something down here. I suspect it's like that everywhere, just people. It's another thing we don't talk about is the amount of prescription drug abuse in this country. And like I said, every 19 minutes somebody will die in the United States because of prescription drug overdoses. That is just criminal. You talk about wanting to protect life. This is part of that. I just...
For example, neuropathic pain. That's this terrible sort of burning, lancinating pain patients have described to me. Oftentimes these patients, they're miserable. They get narcotics, morphine, OxyContin, Dilaudid. These types of medications don't work, maybe at all, but certainly not after a few months. People can develop tolerance to them. And you come to find that marijuana, in a percentage of patients, not only does it work better than these narcotics, it's much safer. Because on those narcotics, Wolf, you and I have talked about this, there's a death, an accidental overdose death from prescription medications every 19 minutes in this country. Those are dangerous medications. They have a role, but they can be dangerous. Whereas with marijuana, I couldn't find a single confirmed overdose death. So you have something that works better, may work when other things don't, and probably much safer. And again, I think that's important for both patients and the medical community to hear.
Right on, Sanjay Ganja. Sanjay Ganja. Yeah, he actually smoked it. He actually admitted that he smoked it, and that he doesn't see that anybody has ever died from an overdose of marijuana. He finds it effective for various conditions. He thinks it's a much better prescription choice than these pain medications. And you know what? I got to agree. Because pain medications don't really remove the pain. They make you not care that you're in pain. And when you don't care that you're in pain, you don't care about anything. You don't care about anybody. You can't have a relationship with somebody. You can't have a relationship with your children. You can't have a relationship with your wife or your husband. You can't have a relationship with your neighbors. You can't have a relationship with anything except the pill. You're in love with the pill. Do you think that I live under a rock somewhere and I'm not aware of what is real and what is not real out there? And all of this distraction that gets talked about on these thousands of hours of radio, which could be used to be talking about things that are really happening, really going on, the heroin highway, the pill epidemic in this country, the meth labs that are going on in this country, the criminalization of people for simple possession of a drug that nobody has ever died taking. Oh, please. And you know why marijuana is illegal? I think most of us do, but I'm not really sure. Here's what I can glean from our history. Seems to me that the DuPonts, and this is why I always tell you there's nothing new under the sun. Corporations always get their way. This is one of those things where, if you make a product and a company also makes a product, and your product is all natural, and your product is effective, and your product is inexpensive, and it works really well, but this company has a vested interest in a synthetic version, or they have an interest in a more expensive version, or they're looking for a defense contract to replace your product. Maybe it's something as simple as hemp, okay, which is the case here. Hemp used to be made, our flag, believe it or not, is made out of hemp, the original flag. All the Navy vessels, the rope was very strong, had to be, was made out of hemp. Hemp was an awesome substance. Now, hemp is different than marijuana, I'll give you that, but hemp is a awesome, strong, natural fiber, and it's great for clothing, and it's great for ropes, and it's great. Well, DuPont came up with nylon. They were a multinational. Nylon stands for New York, London. Okay, that's nylon. And they wanted a defense contract with the Navy to replace the hemp rope with nylon. And so they worked at a local level and all the way through the legislatures to make the growing of hemp illegal. That's why we have a war on drugs. And you see what I mean? When you look at these things and you realize nothing's changed, there's nothing new under the sun. But you do see the results are 219,000 people sitting in federal prison for nonviolent crimes because of the criminalization of something that is so natural, that works so well, that's inexpensive to grow, that's inexpensive to use, that has all kinds of benefits to society. I mean, our newspapers used to be made out of hemp. Then you understand what a multinational can do to our way of life and to individuals. And that's why it's so important to understand, just what's going on around issues that have to do with multinationals, drugs, courts, justice, crime. They're all connected. 49 after.
Randi Rhodes.
Fearless. Honest.